In the crisp chill of a New England dawn, the faint glow of lanterns piercing the darkness, and the urgent clip-clop of horses' hooves echoing through sleepy villages. It's April 19, 1775, and in the towns of Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, the spark of revolution is about to ignite. Welcome to a deep dive into the battles of Lexington and Concord, marking their 250th anniversary in 2025, a pivotal moment when ordinary colonists stood against the might of the British Empire, forever changing the course of American history and the fight for freedom. Let's set the stage. By the mid-1770s, tensions between the 13 American colonies and Great Britain had reached a boiling point. The British Parliament, desperate to assert control and recoup costs from the French and Indian War, imposed a series of taxes and laws that the colonists viewed as tyrannical. Remember the Stamp Act of 1765? It taxed everything from newspapers to playing cards, sparking widespread protests with cries of no taxation without representation. Then came the Townshend Acts, slapping duties on tea, glass, and paper, leading to boycotts and unrest. But the real flashpoint was the Boston Tea Party in 1773, when patriots disguised as Mohawk Indians dumped 342 chests of British tea into Boston Harbor as a bold act of defiance. In retaliation, King George III and Parliament passed the coercive acts known to Americans as the Intolerable Acts in 1774. These closed Boston's port, revoked Massachusetts' charter, and allowed British troops to quarter in private homes. The colonists weren't having it. They formed the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia, uniting delegates from 12 colonies to coordinate resistance. In Massachusetts, the Provincial Congress took over governance, urging towns to stockpile arms and train militias. The famous Minutemen, ready to mobilize in a minute's notice, entered General Thomas Gage, the British commander in Boston, with 3,000 redcoats under his command. Gage received secret orders from London to crush the rebellion. Spies informed him that the Patriots had hidden cannons, gunpowder, and muskets in Concord, about 20 miles inland. On the night of April 18, 1775, Gage dispatched 700 elite troops under Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith to march to Concord, destroy the supplies, and arrest rebel leaders like Samuel Adams and John Hancock, who were hiding in Lexington. But the Patriots had their own intelligence network. The Sons of Liberty, Dr. Joseph Warren, a key figure in Boston, learned of the plan and sent out riders to warn the countryside. The most famous was Paul Revere, a silversmith and engraver, who rode north across the Charles River by boat, then on horseback. "Are coming out," he whispered urgently to households along the way, not shouting, "The British are coming." As myth would have it, since most colonists still considered themselves British, Revere was joined by William Dawes, who took a southern route, and later by Samuel Prescott, a young doctor who evaded British patrols to reach Concord. Thanks to those midnight riders, alarm bells rang, drums beat, and signal lanterns glowed from Boston's Old North Church to If by Sea, as Henry Wadsworth Longfellow later poeticized in his famous poem. By the time the British column reached Lexington at around 5 a.m., about 77 Minutemen under Captain John Parker were assembled on the town green. Parker, a veteran of the French and Indian War, issued his immortal order: "Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." The British vanguard, led by Major John Pitcairn, marched onto the green and demanded the militia disperse. "Lay down your arms, you damned rebels!" Pitcairn shouted. The scene was tense, farmers and shopkeepers facing professional soldiers in bright redcoats. Neither side wanted to fire first, but in that charged moment, a shot rang out. To this day, no one knows who pulled the trigger: a nervous colonist, a British soldier, or perhaps an onlooker. Chaos erupted. The redcoats unleashed a disciplined volley, their muskets belching smoke and lead. 8 Patriots fell dead, including Jonathan Harrington, who crawled to his doorstep and died in his wife's arms. 10 more were wounded. The Minutemen scattered, firing a few wild shots that wounded one British soldier and grazed Pitcairn's horse. The skirmish at Lexington lasted mere minutes, but it was the first bloodshed of the Revolution. Emboldened, the British pressed on to Concord, arriving around 7 a.m. There, they split into detachments to search for the hidden stores. They found some flour barrels, wooden tools, but the bulk had been relocated thanks to the warnings. At the Old Manse near the North Bridge, Reverend William Emerson watched as militiamen gathered, Meanwhile, at Barrett's farm, Colonel James Barrett's family cleverly hid weapons under plowed fields. As smoke rose from burning supplies, visible for miles, hundreds of Minutemen from surrounding towns converged on Concord. At the North Bridge, about 400 colonists faced a small British guard of 90 men. Major John Buttrick, leading the Patriots, ordered his men forward. When the British fired, killing 2 Minutemen, Buttrick cried, "Fire, fellow soldiers! For God's sake, fire!" The colonists unleashed a ragged but effective volley. The shot heard round the world, as Ralph Waldo Emerson later called it in his Concord hymn. 3 British soldiers died, 9 wounded, and the rest fled back to town. Now the tide turned. Colonel Smith, realizing the mission was compromised, ordered a retreat to Boston. But the 16-mile march back became a nightmare. Of Minutemen, farmers, blacksmiths, even women and children swarmed the roads, firing from behind stone walls, trees, and houses in guerrilla style. It was asymmetric warfare at its finest. The British, marching in formation, were sitting ducks. At Merriam's Corner, the first major ambush hit. In Monotony, now Arlington, the fighting grew house to house, brutal in close quarters. By the time the exhausted redcoats staggered into Boston, under the protection of reinforcements, the toll was staggering. British casualties: 73 killed, 174 wounded, 36 missing, nearly 40% of the force. Colonial losses: 49 killed, 39 wounded, 5 missing. News spread like wildfire. In Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress convened, appointing George Washington as commander-in-chief. The siege of Boston began, and the revolution was underway. No longer just protests, but a full-fledged war for independence. What made Lexington and Concord so transformative? It wasn't just the battles. It was the spirit they unleashed. Ordinary Americans, patriots from all walks of life, proved they could stand against the world's greatest army. It galvanized the colonies, drawing in support from Virginia to New Hampshire. Thomas Paine's Common Sense pamphlet soon followed, fanning the flames. And globally, it inspired revolutions in France and beyond, proving that a fight for liberty could topple empires. Fast forward to 2025, and we're commemorating the 250th anniversary with profound reflection. In Lexington and Concord, reenactments brought history to life. Thousands gathered on the green for dawn ceremonies, complete with musket volleys and parades. President Trump's proclamation hailed it as a day of American strength, echoing the Minutemen's resolve. Museums like the Concord Museum hosted special exhibits on revolutionary artifacts, while Minuteman National Historical Park offered immersive tours along the Battle Road Trail. Communities across Massachusetts organized events, from lantern light vigils to educational programs, reminding us how those shots in 1775 shaped our democracy today. Yet, as we celebrate, let's ponder. What would the founding fathers think of America in 2025? Amid our divisions, the ideals of freedom, self-governance, and unity endure. Lexington and Concord teach us that liberty isn't given, it's fought for, defended by everyday heroes. In an era of challenges, from cybersecurity threats to political polarization, that revolutionary spirit calls us to stand our ground, just as Parker urged. So as we wrap this deep dive, remnants of Lexington and Concord weren't just history. They're a blueprint for American resilience. Visit the sites, read the accounts, and carry that fire forward, because the fight for freedom never truly ends. Thank you for joining me on this journey through America's revolutionary roots. If this sparked your interest, hit that like button, subscribe for more historical deep dives, and share your thoughts in the comments. What's your favorite Revolutionary War story? Until next time, keep exploring the past that built our present.